Okay, Roy, thank you for coming. We would like to ask you a few questions about the examination in the U.S. First of all, I think you should start with a short overview, and then we'll start with the specific questions.
Sure. So the United States examination typically begins 3 months after filing a trademark application. Typically, there's different also ways that you can file a trademark in the U.S. We have various treaties, and so, for example, you can file a trademark application in the United States on what we call an intent-to-use basis. So if you're thinking of filing a trademark and you haven't actually used the mark in commerce, you can file what they call an intent-to-use trademark application. Intent-to-use trademark application, later on you're going to have to show your use, so meaning you have to file a specimen of use before you obtain a registration. But that's one way you can file in the United States. The second way you can file is if you actually are using the trademark in commerce. So if you actually, and use means you have to use the trademark in a commercial sense. So if you are using, you can file as a use-based trademark. That's 1A, and intent to use is 1B. Two other ways you can enter is via the, you can rely on a foreign registration, which is Article 44. So if you have, for example, if you filed a trademark in Israel, you can then within 6 months file a trademark application also in the United States and claim priority to that registration. And then the final one is you can use the Madrid Protocol system. So if you file a trademark, for example, in Israel, or you file in any country that you actually have a place of business, then you can later on file in the United States via the Madrid Treaty.
Okay, Roy, thank you very much. As you know, in Israel we file application through the Madrid Protocol, designating the U.S. as a main destination. Can you please clarify what would be the best way to draft the list of goods in the U.S.?
So in the United States, the lists of goods and services, we have 45 different classes. And also in the United States, we have what we call the USP2 ID manual. So generally, I like to recommend to clients to generally try to find and describe your list of goods and services to comply with the ID manual. Generally, that involves more, when you do that, you often have fewer rejections, and then you comply with the USPTO standards, and it's a smart strategy because examiners are looking at that ID manual to make sure that your goods and services fall into one of the specified classes. So it's generally good when you're drafting the trademark application to make sure and consult with the US ID manual, and also obviously to consult with the US practitioner.
Okay, thank you. Do you have rush examination in the US like we do here in Israel? And if not, what's the best way to expedite the examination process?
So in the U.S., we do have accelerated examination. Basically, you have to file what we call a petition. It's basically a petition to make special, and there's certain circumstances that you can file a trademark under an accelerated basis. One is if you believe you have impending trademark infringement. So if you have an impending trademark infringement, you can file for an accelerated basis. Now, in the U.S., typically, once you file, your trademark is examined within 3 months, and your registration will typically, if there's no issues and no office actions, you should be able to obtain a registration within about 9 months. Under an accelerated basis, you probably can go from filing to registration in about probably 3 to 4 months.
Okay, thank you. Can you base the U.S. registration on foreign registration like we do here in Israel?
So, yes, you can. So basing a registration, there's the 2 ways. One is the Madrid, as I mentioned before, and also the second is the Paris Convention applications, which is Section 44. So there's 44D, which is if you're basing it on a pending registration, a pending application. There's also 44E, where you're basing it on a pending or on a granted certificate. So if you file, for example, in Israel and you have a granted certificate, you can then base it on that granted application. Now, if you file 44D, you'll still have to protect your priority claim. Whereas 44E, you have the certificate already, and you can base it on the 44E filing.
Okay, thank you. Two more procedural questions. First of all, what's the deadline for applying for office action? And can we extend it with further time? What's the timetable for extension? And second question, is it possible to seek retroactive extensions like we do here, in Israel?
So Ariel raised a very good point. So in trademarks, you typically have 6 months to file a response to an office action. So if that deadline is not extendable, which is different than if you're in the patent space where you're allowed, you have an office action, you have 3 months, and you have 3 1-month extensions of time with increasing fees. So if you fail to file a response to that office action, your application will go abandoned. There are procedures to reinstate your trademark application. You have to revive it, and it's typically granted if you're in good faith filing the revival, and within a short amount of time. So if you file, for example, 2 or 3 months after you miss your deadline, you can revive your trademark application. You have to make a certification that you did it unintentionally, that the trademark went unintentionally. But otherwise, 6 months is really the deadline for the United States, and that's similar to the Patent Act, where you have a total of 6 months extension with the increasing fees.
שאלות כלשהם שאתם רוצים להפנות לרוי? Any questions regarding the US examination? אוקיי, אני רק יבהיר כמה נקודות באמת בפער, בהבדל בין הרישום בישראל לבין ארצות הברית. אז בארצות הברית, בניגוד לישראל, יש חובת שימוש. מה שאצלנו בארץ, אתה יכול להגיש בקשה לסימן מסחר, ולא בודקים את השימוש בפועל. כמובן שיש את הבקשות לביטול בשל היעדר שימוש, אבל באופן עקרוני אני יכול להיות בעלים של סימן מסחר במשך 20 שנה, לא לעשות שימוש בסימן ולהמשיך ולתחזק אותו ולעשות חידושים. בארצות הברית זה לא עובד, יש חובה להגיש בקשה, זה מה שנקרא Declaration of Use. אני אבקש מרוי קצת להסביר על ה-Declaration of Use ובעצם מה זה אומר. אני חושב שלנו כעורכי דין ישראלים, שלאחרונה, כבר 8 שנים, אנחנו יכולים להגיש באמצעות פרוטוקול מדריד, חשוב לדעת איך לתחזק ואיך לשמור על סימני המסחר. עוד, פחות או יותר הפרמטרים הם דומים, זאת אומרת, גם יש שם citation, יש שם אותה פרוצדורה. אז רק נסיים בעניין של Declaration of Use, ואם יהיו עוד שאלות אז אנחנו נעבור הלאה.
That's תודה, אריאל. So a declaration of use is basically a certification that you're using your trademark in commerce. Now, the United States is slightly different than Israel in most jurisdictions where we are what we call a use-based system. So for example, if you have someone who was using a trademark for many years but didn't file a trademark application, they still have what they call common law rights to that trademark, which is different as opposed to Israel where you need to file. So often kind of interesting situations happen if you have what they call a senior user, someone who's been using the mark in commerce, later on finds that a junior user who then filed and registered a trademark has the trademark, whereas the senior user has been using the mark in commerce for a longer time. That's a type of situation where you have a trademark cancellation proceeding, and the senior user, if that person establishes a use that's earlier than the junior user, will be able to cancel the mark based on use. So that's procedurally a big difference. With regards to Ariel's question, regarding to a declaration of use, every application you will need to, in the United States, if it's filed on a use basis or an intent to use basis, you have to eventually submit your declaration of use. So if you, for example, file and your list of goods and services are in class 25 for various clothing items, let's say you're a retailer, and you put in a list of goods and services, t-shirts, hats, sneakers, you're going to have to file what they call a declaration of use or a specimen of use for all of those areas and all those goods. So that's submitted via evidence to the trademark office by submitting a photograph, for example, in this example, photographs showing the good being sold in commerce, other types of evidence, for example, online use. So if you have an online website where you're selling clothes, you'll want to show examples and evidence that you're using the mark in commerce, because without this use, you don't have trademark rights. And companies, let's say, for example, if you don't use your mark, can file and challenge your trademark registrations and cancel your application based on non-use. After 5 years, you're going to have to reaffirm your use. You have to submit another specimen of use. And after 10 years, you have to submit a renewal application, which continues to show that your use in commerce. So if you once you obtain a registration and you continuously show use in commerce, you can keep your trademark. Another advantage for the U.S. is we have this notice called incontestability. So basically, by filing a mark and then using your mark for 5 years in commerce, you can then petition with your statement of use that your mark is incontestable. And what that means is if anyone ever challenges your mark as being descriptive, there's certain other advantages, but that's the main advantage, where no one can then try to cancel your trademark on the count that it's descriptive if you've obtained incontestable status. It's a long-winded answer to the question, but I hope I answered it.